Hello, boils and ghouls. You are now tuned in to PVD Horror Podcast. Pleasant screams.
Hey everybody, welcome to PVD Horror. My name is Dave and I'm joined here with my co-host Brandon. And today we have a very, very special episode that we are very excited for. We have Patrick Brice, who is the director, co-creator, and co-writer of the Creep films and the Creep tapes, as well as the film The Overnight with Adam Scott and Jason Schwartzman, and multiple episodes of the Duplass Brothers Room 104, which was excellent as well. He joins us as we are getting ready for the Creep Tapes Season 2 premiere, which will be on November 14th on Shudder and AMC+. So, Patrick, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So, Patrick, I had the opportunity to attend Fantastic Fest, though I left shortly before you guys arrived. Can you describe your experience showcasing and screening Creep Tapes Season 2 at Fantastic Fest?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so Creep has had a long and I would say wonderful history when it comes to screening for audiences in Austin. The first Creep premiered at South by Southwest in 2014 there. And, you know, it was funny because like we'd made this movie and at the time I just was like so nervous about like whether people were going to like it or not. I was like nervous about the fact that this was like this weird movie with like two dudes just talking to each other in the woods with no blood. How that was going to be, accepted by the horror community. And so, and then we didn't get into Sundance. And so it was like, every filmmaker around every indie filmmaker around November, if you notice they're kind of depressed, it's usually because they didn't get into Sundance with their movie. Yeah. And so I was like feeling down in the dumps and feeling like I wasn't worthy. And then we got into South by Southwest and it was like, okay, I guess we'll play at South by Southwest. And there couldn't have been a better audience to watch that film for the first time. And it like brought down the house. It got good reviews. We sold it out of the festival. And so from that point on, I was like, Austin, I will do anything for you. You are a delightful place. And that's been the case with every single movie that I brought there, whether it's The Overnight or Creep 2. And so, when we premiered the first season of the Creep tapes, the decision to screen at Fantastic Fest, I thought like couldn't have been better. And, it's one of these things where like, when we made the first season of the show, we took it everywhere and, there were some folks that are interested in it, but by far Shudder and AMC Plus sort of were the ones that were rolling out the red carpet for us. And, and a big part of that was our entire audience already exists there. And so I felt the same about Fantastic Fest, where it's like, why would we not go premiere this to the freaks that actually are looking for this? And so, yeah, it was a total blast. Being able to, screen this at the Alamo. And at this point, going back with the second season, it feels like going home in a lot of ways for this series.
Oh, that's cool. So now you touched on Shudder. They're consistently delivering high quality original series and films. What has been your experience working with them?
Oh, incredible, and in a way that I think I feel spoiled. When it comes to not only the making of this show, which, we still shoot this with the same camera we shot the first movie with. Like it's still, we weren't going to do this if it wasn't done in the same DIY manner. Like that ethos is part of what drives us and excites us about this. And that's not to say that doesn't come with like a shitload of challenges and, and makes it much more harder, I guess, as a process. But at the same time, like I get to work with like my literal best friends, and it still feels like that childlike feeling, of making stuff with your buddies, just running around with a video camera. And so I think Mark and I both need that in our lives and strive for that. So the fact that we've created a situation in which we're able to have a like perpetual adolescence and it be work is, like something we don't take for granted for a second. And at the same time, having a platform for it to come out on where, like I said, our audience is already there for the most part.
Yep.
And the people that we're working with there, whether it's, Scott Schumann or Sam Zimmerman, who run the company, or like people I can text on the phone and are people that I, love to work with. It feels like a dream. So I'm very, very grateful that it exists. And I also like understand uniquely how timing works with the industry when it comes to things being successful or not. Creep, I think by and large, a big reason why it was successful was it was on Netflix just as the streaming boom was sort of starting. And so that, every genre fan watches every horror movie on Netflix. And so I think if it hadn't have come out on Netflix, it would have been a much more different story. And so to the same point, I think the Creep tapes coming out on Shudder, while Shudder is in the spot that it's in now, has also been a huge benefit, And one of those things where like I think it was meant to be like that, there was a huge gap between the second movie and the show.
Yeah.
And I think that's for a reason. I think because the movies needed to sort of like build up this cult following that they had, and for there to actually be a demand for more stories in this world and with this character. And so to be able to do it in this way is and sort of like not have the pressure of it being a third or fourth movie at the same time, but mainly be this like kind of incubator where we just get to play with this character and go wherever our hearts are sort of sending us has just been like a total delight.
Yeah. I just kind of wanted to share, like when I saw Creep for the first time, I think like my initial response to it was, something like awe and like, how unique it was and fascinating. And it just really kind of hit me. And it was like, it checked so many boxes for like the kind of things I already gravitate towards. And I know I'm not alone in that feeling because it built a following pretty quickly, which I was actually kind of surprised when we would like post about it, how many people would like chime in with like, oh, I love that too. And because I at some point thought I found this like hidden gem, but like, no, I didn't. A bunch of did its success surprise you in any way? Like how, when you released the first one, like how well did you realistically think it was going to do?
I was so nervous about putting it out in the world that I made another movie during the time that it was, picked up by Blumhouse and then put out on Netflix. I very quickly went into the process of writing and making an entire other movie because I was so worried about being pigeonholed as a found footage filmmaker at the time, and I think, what's that?
Was that the Overnight?
Yeah. And it's funny because like both Creep and the Overnight ended up coming out within 2 weeks of each other in 2015. And there's like some similarities between the two. Like they're both very awkward, both have a like, darkly comedic sensibility or whatever, but like one's a horror movie, one's a sex comedy for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think at that time, found footage was really kind of dead as a genre. And that was part of Jason Blum's reasoning for picking us up was, this guy was like the master of found footage because of what he'd done with the Paranormal Activity franchise at that point. And so he, when he watched Creep, he was like, guys, I watch every found footage movie that exists. Like it all gets sent to me. And everyone thinks that they can do this because it's cheap and but he says, what's missing in all of it is the characters and is the sort of interpersonal aspect of it. And that's all the Creep is, is like, and so I think, and I also feel very lucky that it's coincided with this. I don't I don't want to say millennial, but it's almost like a Gen Z love of cringe, you know, which,
Yes.
which is I think a thing. And and it's definitely cringe. It's still cringe. Like it's just baked into the way we do this, you know? And so, you know, I would say like a large part of our audience is like kids in their 20s and like and now in their 30s. And so like when I see like scenes from it being posted on TikTok or whatever, you know, it's like people wanting to get that ick feeling, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm very grateful that like the timing couldn't have worked out better with that as well. Because I think in another world, this would have been something that people would just looked at and been like, "Oh, this is terrible," you know. uh,
Now, you addressed the challenges of creating another film, and now that's actually underway. Can you discuss why you believe this should be the final film installment?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just walk that back for a second. I didn't say I said it should be a definitive statement. I don't think it's
Mm,
I don't want to say never, you know.
okay.
Um and it's funny because like anytime I mention Creep 3 at all, it inevitably gets picked up in some way. It's now. And so
Uh,
like I'm learning to be a little more cautious about picking
Sure.
my words. Um I will say right now, like our entire focus is on the show and making sure the show continues to like you know challenge ourselves creatively, not repeat ourselves when it comes
mhm.
to what we're doing. You know, we are now that we have, you know, what I'd call is like a fan base or a fandom or whatever, like we listen to what people are saying and we want it to be good and we want it to like justify its own existence, you know. So that's sort of like our main focus right now.
Mhm.
That said, when it comes to the idea of like a third movie and doing what a third movie does or a fourth movie, you know, in the Creep film series, it has to explore a topic that's bigger than what we're dealing with in the Creep tapes. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so when I say it has to be a definitive statement, I mean it has to justify its own existence as a movie. And so there's inevitably going to be added pressure that we apply to ourselves when it comes to that because we want it to be good and we want it to have a reason to be there. And you know, I think what was exciting about the second movie for both of us was we loved this overall idea of like, okay, we've made this one movie that is essentially hinging on whether or not this character is a serial killer, right? We we let the cat out of the bag at the end of that movie. You know,
Yeah.
it's very clear what is happening. With the second movie, it was like, okay, how do we then still continue to surprise and go in unexpected ways now that we know that this is the
Mhm.
case, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's where we came up with this existential crisis storyline. And also really hammered home on the like pathological liar aspect of it, where, you know, I think even with the second movie, I talked to a lot of people that almost want to believe that he's not a serial killer by the end of the movie. And then we pull the rug out from under you at the again in the second one, where it's like
Yeah.
you saw him murder someone in the cold open, like you know.
Yeah.
But I think that's also like one of the great things about Mark's character and Mark's performance is that he can kind of do that, you know, and he can kind of use
Mhm.
that charm. And so, you know, I think we want to find new ways to play with that with both the series going forward
Mhm.
and with whatever a third movie will be. I mean, part of the fun of the second season and one of the themes that sort of emerged as we were making it was the idea of like these situations going wrong, you know, that he's creating for
Yeah.
people. And I don't know about you guys, but like I love seeing when a plan goes wrong in a
Yeah.
movie,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love seeing where an antagonist is being flustered, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
Yeah.
so and so I hope audiences like that because that's our entire second season, basically.
I can't
And,
wait.
and that feels like a very natural transition because there's so many times in the first season where you feel like maybe it's going wrong, but then it all somehow is like part of his plan in some way.
Yeah.
He always kind of
Yeah.
brings it back to it. And you kind of answered a lot of what I want to ask you next, because I think what you said about like the films and how they transitioned to the show, the films were like this kind of like exploring this idea: is he a serial killer? Is he not? But when we get to by the time we get to the creep tapes, we know that he's just a serial killer. Now we're just exploring the different cases, I guess, or the different victims and all that stuff. Was that tough to like go from this like the long form story to like these shorter condensed, like how do we make this interesting, and we have about like I forget, it is like 50 minutes or so, like something like that, episodes of just one murder, and like how do we like keep these varied too so it doesn't feel too redundant?
Yeah. No, that was a big challenge. I mean, it wasn't like it wasn't stifling, it was actually like really exciting, but it did take like a real acknowledgement of like, oh, we're having to tell this story in a different way with this show, and the episodes are between 20 and 27 minutes, and so it's like you were saying, like how do you keep that engaging at the same time? And so I don't know, like I think both Mark and I have always been excited by the idea of constraints, and taking those constraints and sort of flipping them on their head is like how can we take these two tools that are being given to us and make them work in a fashion that makes sense and feels new. I mean, that's what we did with the first movie, and so I think there are moments where we're like scared and there are moments where we don't have an ending, or need a scene that we thought was going to work in one way is not working, and so we're having to rewrite it. But because of the dynamic of the show and the way the show works, and it is just me, Mark, and Chris Donlin, our editor, and then our producer, and then one other actor, like we can like take 30 minutes to an hour even in the middle of a shoot day and rewrite something and go shoot it. And then if it works, or if one element of it works and one doesn't, we then build on that. So we have the freedom of not having like an entire crew sitting behind us waiting for us to workshop things, once we get into the actual space. And so yeah, while it's like definitely a challenge, it's not easy. It's flexing a muscle that maybe you don't always use when it comes to, like, I'm much more calm and feel taken care of when I'm working on like a multi-million-dollar movie than I am when I'm doing Creep. Because someone else is usually taking care of everything else for me, and whereas with Creep, it's like literally just us. And if we don't do it right, it's not going to be good. And so, but that said, at the same time, I have learned to embrace that element of it as opposed to being frustrated by it, which I think like early on, it was maybe like, oh, fuck, why are we doing this in this way? This is very hard. And now it's like, oh, this is like maybe one of the only places that I can feel truly free as a creative person right now, and also have it be seen by people, and so, I think it's just us sort of embracing all the things that we were maybe initially scared of, or that were hard.
And earlier you mentioned like the time that it came out and why this maybe resonated with the audience at the time. I also think it came out at a time where there was this transition, like, and I've talked about this way too much on this podcast, but like there was this mumblecore movement, and like Mark was a part of that movement. I was a big fan of Mark Duplass. I'm definitely a Mark Duplass fanboy. Like every project he's ever worked on, I've always loved, and I just think he's like such a great actor. He elicits so many different like emotions, and he's quirky, and I just really appreciate the work that he's done. And you've worked with him obviously for like over a decade. Why do you think you guys continue to gravitate working together, and what makes that like so fun and exciting all the time?
I mean, it's multiple reasons and on multiple levels. I mean, on a personal level, like he's one of my best friends. He's the godfather to my children. So we actually like each other and like being around each other. So I think that helps in a big way. Like, I think if I did something with someone that I'd maybe just met, or like, I mean, I don't know. It's funny because like we weren't that close when we made the first movie. We knew each other, but it wasn't like like the deep years long relationship that we've had at this point. And so I think the fact that we want to work together, I think also the fact that on a professional level, he's one of the best and most interesting and most diverse actors I've ever worked with. And he has the ability to go to a place that is completely without fear as an actor, and without he doesn't get tripped up. He doesn't feel scared. He's really able to just like play and be free in a way that I think is reflected in the performances in the show and in the movies, and is just so special. And I think I'm just so grateful that of all of his roles, none of which stretch as far as this character, I would say. You know what I mean? Like he's so in the pocket and he's so natural, but we go to places that are not natural, with this character. And the fact that he's able to pull that off is huge. And so like, I think part of my job in that is just like kind of creating a space where like we can't do anything wrong, where like, and if something isn't working in the right direction, like it's safe enough that like you can take a big swing and not work. And then he's also able to be self-critical enough that he's able to see himself or in a performance and then be able to pivot afterwards. I mean, I was talking about him and as like not only this like great like sort of like harnesser of like naturalism, but he also is like a very technical actor at the same time. Like he's one of those people that knows how to like pick up an object on this line, put it down on this line. He's able to keep like multitudes in his head at the same time. And so because of how we shoot the show, and because the show is essentially just like pointing a camera at him, that puts enormous amount of pressure on his performance,
Yeah.
and I don't think most actors can really I mean, I just like, I don't know, I just say it's a very hard thing to pull off, and so I mean, I've been delighted by like our guest stars and their ability to sort of meet him and go there with him. I think you guys will see with like especially like the David Desmalchian episode, like outside of the joy of just like seeing those guys on screen together, I think the sort of tit for tat performance of them is kind of something to behold, and was just it was my fingers were crossed that it was going to be the case, and it was the case. And so I think like it's a great extension of like those performances that you were talking about, like him as a in the Mumblecore movies and stuff, that he's like taking that style and then kind of running with it, with what we're doing.
Yeah, and that was one of my questions too, like bringing in guest stars for this season. What was it like to process, like choosing who to bring into the creep world?
It's like, I mean, we feel like kids in a candy store basically, because I think that was one of the sort of residual aspects of the show that we were not expecting, was like, oh, we get to work with a fun, interesting, amazing actor in each of these episodes. And so curating that is a lot of fun, because like it's not only like it it could be casting friends who we know are great actors and are amazing, like for the first season, the second episode, the Birders episode, the guy that plays Elliot, the birder in that episode, Dave Nordstrom, is like one of my best friends of the last 15 years, and an amazing editor. Like he's an Emmy-winning editor. He did the show Cheer and won an Emmy for that. And like, but he's also a great actor, and he's just like someone that I love to be around. And so like, and Mark loves too. And so, we put him in that. And then like, but then like for people like David Desmalchian, like that's someone who like, we were just like, could we get him? Would he want to do this? And is a little more in the world of like us playing towards our fans and knowing that our fans would love to see, or assuming that our
Yeah.
fans would love to see them together, you know. So it's a combination of those two things. It's like pie in the sky, what actors would we love to work with and would make sense in this tone and this world, but that also including like friends and collaborators who we've always loved. One other example is Robert Longstreet, who's one of my favorite character actors that exists. He's in all the David Gordon Green Halloween movies now, and he's in a lot of these Mike Flanagan series. And he's been in indies forever. And I did a Room 104 episode with him that I'm super proud of. And writing the episode this season that takes place in the same room where they shot the Saw movie, the first Saw.
Okay.
Was really exciting for us because he was just someone who, like, we wrote the episode for him. You know, we just love him as an actor and loved the idea of his dynamic playing off of Mark.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I think I speak for both of us to say we are so excited for this next season to come out. I cannot wait to check it out. So everybody, make sure you are tuned into the Creep Tapes season 2 premiere November 14th on Shudder or AMC Plus. And Patrick, honestly, this has been an honor. Thank you so much for joining us and spending a little time talking about this.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks for the great questions, guys.
Thank you.
Game over.